Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Sunday, November the 5th. And today our commentary is about the Rangers, the Texas Rangers, with our good friend Dave Michaels. How are you, Dave? Welcome again. It's always great to see you.
It's always good to be. It's great to be a part of this, and it's always good to see you. Um, I miss the days we used to work together on an everyday basis.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was.
We had coffee together. Remember that? I used
We
to,
had coffee together. We
which was kind of
chit chatted
nice.
about the day's events and
Yes, that
did
was
a
a
pretty
lot
good
of
show.
fun. I
Yeah,
remember that. I remember that quite well. We had a lot of fun together, and I miss that. So
yeah,
maybe we can replace a little bit of that with this.
maybe.
Not completely, but a little bit. But I got to begin. I mean, you and I just watched the Cowboys lose a pretty dramatic game, I would think,
Yeah,
especially a game where the Eagles. I don't know if you agree with me, but it seemed like the Eagles wanted to give the game away for the last 2 or 3 minutes, and it just didn't happen. So it
I don't know
means
about
that,
giving it away, but
yeah,
man, the mistakes.
right.
I don't want to be a fly on that locker room. I'll tell you that. I'm going to learn new words in the English language and maybe another
Right.
language. But no, the Eagles 3 penalties. Okay, pass interference,
Yes.
which moved the ball. The Cowboys get the ball with literally 48 seconds left on the clock. They throw a long pass left sideline, and they're called Eagles are called for pass interference. Move the ball up to the 50. So you're at the 50-yard line. Next play, you throw the ball and it's incomplete, but your quarterback's been hit. So now it's personal foul, roughing the passer. 2
Right.
penalties. Move the ball into the red zone. Now you got encroachment. Move the ball five more yards up. So now you're 1st and 5 from the Eagles 6, and you got over 30 seconds left on the clock. Then Cowboys get called for
Delay of game at the
no,
very
they
end
got
there.
called for illegal procedure.
Okay, that's true.
Move the
That's
ball
true.
back 5 yards, so now you're back to 1st and 10 at the 11. Then you get a quarterback sack.
Right.
Then you get a delay of game, and then you throw, and then you get with literally 5 seconds left on the clock. Well, you had 8 seconds left on the clock. You throw an incomplete pass, come back, reset, throw another pass. It's caught at the 6-yard line, and he's tackled and ends the game. So
No, that was
that was an exciting finish.
yes, it was. That those last 5 or 6 minutes were very exciting. I thought the game was over when they couldn't, when they couldn't get that extra point. I thought the game was over at that point, but they had a chance to come back and they almost pulled it off. But the bottom line, though, is that they're 5-3 and the Eagles are 8-1. So that's what, 2.5 games. That's in 2.5 games in baseball is nothing, but 2.5 games in the NFL is
That's a lifetime.
probably the elimination of the Cowboys winning the East. That's pretty close.
But it does not eliminate them from being a wild card.
No, of course not. Of course, they can always be the wild card.
If you can still get into the postseason, I mean, winning the East would be great.
Mm-hmm.
Just get in the postseason. Just
right,
take your stake. And a good example of that, if Jerry Jones would like to rip a page, here's a segue for you, Silvio. If Jerry Jones would like to rip a page from the Rangers, you go in as a wild card and you win the whole thing. So
right, yeah, win all the road games. That's it.
right.
That's it. That's the thing.
Exactly.
But I mean, obviously, we wish the Cowboys the best, but this was a heartbreaker today because this is the game they could have won, and instead of being 5-3, they'd be 6-2, and the others would be 7-2. Now it's a whole different standing.
And remember, the Cowboys got to play the Eagles again later in the year,
and they got the Giants next week, right?
At AT&T. Giants come to AT&T next Sunday for a late game, a 3:45 start.
Mm-hmm.
And then Thanksgiving, you got the Commanders.
Right. So you've got 3 divisional games here in the month. So it's going to be exciting. I'm sure that like you, I enjoy listening to the sports talk radio on the day after, and I'm sure they'll beat up Dak again. I mean, he'll get completely destroyed on the talk radio, but he didn't have a bad game, really.
No, as far as the game is concerned, I thought he had a fairly stellar game. Drop passes are one thing, quarterback sacks are another. But as far as his accuracy was concerned, and he showed that he still got legs because he made a couple of runs to stretch, the possession, stretch the chains, and give the Cowboys more opportunity. So I like what I see with Dak and the legs. So
yes, well, he almost scored a touchdown. They stopped him, but he almost ran one in. Yeah. But again, it's what Danny White learned in Dallas. I'm sure you remember Danny White, that you can be really, really, really good, but unless you win the Super Bowl, they don't like you around here. Nope. And that's just the way it is. That's just
we saw that with Tony Romo.
Tony Romo, that's right. That maybe even a better example, because Romo was here even longer than Danny White as a starter.
Danny was here quite a while, but a lot of people don't remember Danny White was not just a quarterback; he was a punter.
That's right. Wasn't he from New Mexico State?
Roger Staubach, starting in '77.
Right.
He was a punter.
I remember that. But wasn't he from New Mexico State or New Mexico? Yeah. Danny White
was it New Mexico or Arizona?
Okay, one of those. Yeah, one of those schools. Yeah. But I remember, you're right. I remember him as a punter when he was the Cowboys punter, which is pretty remarkable. Well, let's talk about the Rangers. Obviously winning the World Series. Yeah, I see your hat, and I'm happy to see that. I don't have a hat yet, so I'm going to have to get one for the next time.
Oh, I have loaded up.
Oh my goodness, you're loaded up. You're loaded up.
I know your fans will probably appreciate this, and maybe you will too. I've been covering the Rangers. Forget the fact they've been here 51 years, and I've been watching them for all 51 years. Back in old Arlington Stadium in '72. But I literally been covering the Rangers since around 1980, 81. First with a camera. I was a photographer. Sitting in, the first base photographer as well, and dealing with guys like Doug Rader and Bobby Valentine and guys like that. And then they moved to the new stadium, and in between all that, I got into broadcasting, found out that a microphone was a lot lighter than a 300 millimeter lens, lugging that around. But, I have 3 hats. I have the 2010 American League Championship. I've got the 2011 championship. I even have the 2023 American League Championship hat. Those are they're stored away. This one stays.
No, that's it. You got to keep that one for a long time. I got to get me a hat. I know that they're selling them in different places, but I got to, this coming week, I'm going to go out and get me a T-shirt or a hat but my own, my personal story with the Rangers, I moved to Texas in 1984. Okay. So when I moved here, that was the year before Valentine was hired.
Doug Rader was
that's right. Rader was the manager. Yeah.
I got
and my experience with the Rangers before '84 was living outside of Texas. And I remember David Clyde in 1973 when he pitched. That was a national story. Right. I remember the time that the guy hit the coach.
Lenny Randall.
That's right.
Frank LaCasey.
That's right. And of course, Charlie Huff, who was their superstar for all these years. And so those were the memories. I came here, and I remember in '86 they had that young team that challenged all the way to the end.
Yeah, guys like Bobby Witt, Ruben Sierra,
Odabe McDowell. They had that team, and then they went down again. Then they brought up a bunch of young guys like Dean Palmer.
Then you got Johnny Oates in.
That's right, Dean Palmer. Remember Dean Palmer?
Dean Palmer at third.
And so they had
Gonzalez at left.
That's right.
Kid named Pudge Rodriguez behind the plate.
That's right. And Will
Kenny
Clark
Rogers
at first. Kenny Rogers, Kevin Brown. Yep. So they actually had a bunch of, but they never could quite click. And they finally did in '96. I thought the losses to the Yankees in '96, '98, '99 were really tough because they played very well, actually. Yep. They may have been, Dave, maybe you agree with me with this, but I've told this to several people, that the toughest opponent that the Yankees faced in their 96, 98, and 99 postseason were actually the Rangers. Because if you look at the other teams that they played, they ran away with them. I mean, they swept San Diego. Bruce Bochy was the manager then. They swept Atlanta. They had a tough fight with Cleveland, but for the most part, their toughest postseason was those 3 division series against the Rangers. Then, of course, they went into a drought. Then came the other generation. And, of course, Game 6, what can I tell you about that in 2011? That was dreadful. But, I was telling a friend over the weekend that I thought the 2015, 2016 teams were good enough to win, but they couldn't win the first round. That was painful too.
Yeah, that had nothing. A lot of people say, well, it had a lot to do with Jeff Bannister, but it didn't. Benny was the right guy at the right time. Rangers lost those games to Toronto,
right,
due to sloppy play in the outfield. Elvis had 2 errors, 3 errors in that one inning.
That inning,
and then Batista goes bomb.
Right. Yes.
And then so there are so many elements in a game. Well, you saw it on Wednesday night in the championship game. One of the best outfielders for the Diamondbacks lets the ball go right underneath his glove, goes back to the wall. Rangers scored 2 more runs. They already had 1 in, 2 more come in. Now it's 3-0, and we're in the 7th inning.
Right. No, I know that he's a good player, Alex Thomas. Yeah. Well, I think went to TCU. If I remember reading correctly, TCU graduate or TCU baseball player, I believe. Yeah. I believe he was from TCU, which, by the way, raises another interesting point about postseason baseball this year. There were quite a few Texas guys. I mean, with the Rangers, of course, Josh Young, Bradford from Baylor.
Right.
We drove by Waco this weekend on our way back from a wedding, and there were quite a few signs of Corey Bradford around, honoring him.
Right.
So this is, to me, such an exciting
Chris
team.
Young is a native.
That's right. He is. Chris Young is from Dallas Highland Park, I believe, right?
Yep.
So this is a team. Well, what can I say about Nate Eovaldi? He's a native Texan.
Yep.
From the same town as
Alvin, didn't he?
Yeah, from Nolan Ryan's hometown.
Yeah, Nolan Ryan's country.
So one thing I found about this team, Dave, that I really liked is this is a real fan-friendly team. I mean, as a fan, sometimes you like teams, sometimes you don't. This is a team that fans could really love because everybody on the team, and I guess maybe that's the manager's influence, but everybody on the team sort of, was friendly. That's all I can say. And I like that.
And you and I talked about this the last time, that on opening day against the Philadelphia Phillies, when I arrived at the ballpark and I had an opportunity to go down on the field to get a chance, and this is opening day now, get a chance to see the new faces and talk to to Bruce Bochy and, introduce myself to him and, basically say, look, I know you beat us in 2010, but, can you bring the magic to Texas? That was opening day. Can you bring the magic to Texas? And he looked me right in the eye and he says, that's our plan.
Right.
So from opening day in April of 2023 to November 1, 2023, the magic occurred.
That's
and
right.
You were asking me earlier, Sylvia, about, some of the memories, and you mentioned yours and memories that you had prior to coming to Texas and after being in Texas. One of my first ball game was in 1972. First time I got to go to a professional ball game. My dad took me. It was Kids Day at Old Arlington Stadium, meaning an adult paid $3 to sit in the bleachers, and every kid got in for $1.
Right.
So it was me and 4 of the buddies because you could take 5 kids. And Ted Williams was the manager. We talked about that early. Ted Williams was the manager of the Texas Rangers. Playing left field that day for Boston was a left-handed hitter wearing number 8 on his back, a kid from Long Island, New York, where my dad grew up at. His name was Carl Yastrzemski.
Right.
Who outside of Mickey Mantle, I loved watching Carl Yastrzemski playing baseball.
Absolutely.
And so that was my first experience seeing a Major League Baseball game in person. And my dad instilled in me the love of the game, pretty much probably like yours did. The love of the game, the honor of the game, the loyalty of the game, and everything about it.
Right.
So from that day forward, I have been not just I'm a baseball fan. I'm a fan fanatic.
Right.
My bedtime stories, thank God for my dad, my bedtime stories were the New York Yankees. And because my dad grew up in New York, So, I mean, Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig,
DiMaggio, I would think, right? And
yeah,
because of
Leo
that
Durocher,
generation, right?
Leo the Lip.
Yeah.
Then you got guys that you talk about later on in the 50s and the 60s. So you had Mantle, and you had Whitey Ford, you had Moose Scarron, you had all these guys. These were my bedtime stories,
Right.
listening stories about these Yankees. So obviously, when I became conscious of baseball, we didn't have a Major League Baseball team yet in Texas, other than the Astros, but we didn't have any. We didn't have a Major League Baseball team in Dallas, so I naturally became a Red Sox fan just so my dad and I could argue about something.
Well, one thing I remember about that year that the Rangers came here in '72 is that Frank Howard hit the first home run.
Yes, and
at
unfortunately,
Arlington
Frank
Stadium
Howard died
a couple of
on
days
November
ago.
1.
That's right. He just died a couple of days ago.
He died.
And
He died on the day of the 5th game of the World Series.
wow. And I remember getting the note from my brother, send me a note that Frank Howard had died, and I replied to him, he hit the first home run. And I also, another thing,
dead center field, Arlington Stadium, 400 feet, dead center from home plate.
Wow. I also wrote back to my brother a note saying, I remember Frank Howard hitting some of the biggest, some of the most, the fastest home runs, I should say. They left the park like a missile.
Oh, yeah.
As I remember.
Yeah, they were not majestic rainbows.
No.
These things were heat-seeking.
No, they would kill you if you. I don't know how many fans tried to catch one of his home runs because they would kill you if you didn't know what you were doing.
Exactly.
And Frank Howard, and then of course they also had a pitcher back then who was later their pitching coach. And I'm trying to remember, he pitched for the Rangers. He came from the Washington team, and he pitched here with the Rangers. He was their pitching coach later.
Paul Lindblad?
Either that or he was
Bill Galeski?
No, it'll come to me. But he was their pitching coach.
I'm throwing names out there from my history book. Sorry.
Yes, but but they, of course, they didn't have great teams. But one memory I do have of the Rangers, I was watching a ball game in Baltimore. This would have been 73, 74. And Jim Palmer is throwing a perfect game in the 7th inning against the Rangers. Mm-hmm. And Rico Cardi, remember him?
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Rico Cardi breaks it up, hits the line drive up the middle, and breaks up the perfect, not just the no-hitter, but the perfect game against Jim Palmer. So that was another little bit of Ranger. And, of course, who can forget Billy Martin managing the Rangers? One Ranger that I always loved, and I guess he was around so long, Tom Grieve. Maybe you got to know him in your job.
Yes.
Just an absolutely great guy.
And to know that Tag, as he's affectionately known by a lot of people, will get a ring. He will get a ring.
That's great. No, I'm happy. I didn't know if he would, but I'm glad that
he'll get a ring.
That is great.
Yeah, and deservedly so. John Blake, who's the vice president of communications, been around them since the mid 80s. I've known John forever and ever and ever and ever. He's got a ring because he left the Rangers for a very brief time. He went to Boston and was working with the Red Sox, got a ring with the Red Sox. I believe it was in 2004. So, but I think this ring is going to mean much, much more to him than the history of that Boston, obscurity for so many years. So that's going to be kind of fun. I mean, some of the guys, we thought back, at least I reflected the night of the game. In fact, if you ask my wife, bottom of the 9th inning, 2 outs, and watching Spores on the mound before the last strike of the game, I have tears literally streaming from my eyes, which, by the way, I will now tell you that, yes, there is crying in baseball. But
well, you weren't the only one. I guarantee you were not the only fan
I
crying.
Probably wasn't.
Because it touched a lot of people,
But guys I've worked with and guys who I have known who are no longer with us, who have passed away. One in particular was the engineer of the broadcast for not just the Ranger organization, but also the Dallas Cowboy radio network. His name was Ted Nickel Payne. And, Ted passed away a year ago in July, sitting in his car prior to a Sunday game.
I remember that.
And Ted and I have been friends for the better part of 15, 20 years. And so his image flashed through my head, along with a guy named Mike Young, who used to work with us around KBCE days. But I've known Mike for forever. He worked for 105.3 The Fan as well. And so many other guys, David Crone, who used to work at WB 33 as a sports director. So all these memories came rushing back into my head, along with my dad,
right?
Who, I wish he would have been here to have witnessed it as well. So those are the things, as somebody who, I know there are people going to say, gee, Dave, you're awfully sentimental. Yeah, I kind of am.
When you're talking about baseball, you have a right to be sentimental. Because I'm the same way. I got a call the night that they clinched, the one in the World Series. I got a call by one of the Spanish stations, and they asked my reaction, And I said that my head was a combination of total happiness for all the years that we have been waiting for this, but also very nostalgic, that I was thinking about my parents, my mom and dad, who passed away. And not that they were great Rangers fans. They were actually more Orioles fans, because that's where we used to live before. But they became Rangers fans because they were here for such a long time. And so I mentioned, I was thinking about all the Sunday afternoons that our family would get together for lunch. You know how Cubans are. They get together for lunch with their families on Sundays. So every Sunday we would go over there, and we'd either be watching the Cowboys or the Rangers. And we'd be sitting with my dad in the living room watching the game, Cowboys or Rangers, depending what season. And my mother would cook, and we sit down and watch the game. The number of stories that we used to talk to my father about. So I thought about the two of them. And because I know that loss in 2011 really hit them hard.
Oh, yeah.
They were like many other fans. So for me, it was a combination of nostalgia, sentimentality, just like it was with you. And it's funny because then all these people begin to come out of your head. The other day I was listening to the radio, and they're interviewing Randy Galloway. I had not heard his name for 10 years. And he was talking about, and one guy that I really felt good for was Nelly Cruz, because Nelly Cruz was a great player, put up some great numbers. He was the reason we went to the 2011 World Series. And for him, now we can put that behind. And hopefully the Rangers next year will bring him in one day and have him throw out the first pitch. I think that would be a fitting end to that terrible, I don't know, maybe they will.
I would like to see Nelly Cruz go into the Texas Ranger Hall of Fame.
May happen. He put up the numbers. Again, I go back to when Nelly Cruz came here. If you remember, he came here from Milwaukee. They had that trade. Buck Showalter was the manager. And he came here, and he put up some great numbers with the Rangers. And I have no hesitation in saying that he was the reason we were in the World Series in 2011, or one of the reasons we were in the World Series. So it brought back a lot of things for me, a lot of memories. And I cannot get enough of this. I on Twitter, they have all these videos they keep showing. And on the internet, they keep showing all these videos of just old. I cannot get enough of it.
Yep.
I mean, I'm like hooked on it. I mean, anything I see, I watch it. Even during the Cowboys game today, I don't know if you noticed this. They ran this ad thanking the Rangers. I think it was Channel 4 who ran it, or Fox Sports. I don't know who ran it. But it was fantastic, remembering the season. So I cannot get enough of it. Eventually, of course, we have to move on. And
not yet, though.
Not yet. No, we got a little time. Not yet. We got time to digest this.
I'm relishing it.
I am too. And
did you by chance get a chance to go to the parade?
I was going to ask you. That was one of my questions I wanted to ask you. I couldn't make it. We were actually in Austin because of a wedding that day. So I watched it on my little iPhone. I could actually pick up one of the broadcasts. How many people were there? I hear all kinds of
500 to 700 is what I'm hearing officially, but I could tell you that it was closer to 6 to 7, not 5.
How can you fit that many? Where do they fit that many people in that strip? I mean, what, 2 or 3 streets or avenues?
They went around. Actually, they went around the block. Literally went around the block. They went down Cowboy Way, which is the street that's on the far south side of the stadium. Okay, and that's the street that runs between the ballpark and AT&T. Is Cowboys Way. So they blocked off part of that, the side that the stadium's on, the AT&T's on. So you had Cowboys Way, then you had Ballpark Way, then you had Nolan Ryan, and coming back down AT&T.
Wow.
So it's a square that they went around, and a lot of people say, well, this is a typical Texas type of parade. You got a bunch of guys riding in the back of pickup trucks, but
that's what made it fun. That's what made it fun.
Exactly.
But I thought it was I thought it was great. I thought the whole thing was so well done, so perfectly well done, that it was almost like the right way to say thanks for the season. It was the right way. And then when Bruce Bochy gets up and says that his little granddaughter had told him, let's do this again, I thought that was fabulous. And then when Seager does the
stab in the heart to the Astros,
was fantastic.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you one thing before I forget. I mentioned my parents. I got to mention my brother too, because he lives in Houston now. He's not a Houston Astros fan. That's just more of a business thing that he lives there. But when my sons were little, he was single when they were little. And he was the one who used to buy him all the Cowboys or Rangers jerseys. So every Sunday, whenever we would get together as a family, he would have a new jersey for them, whether it was Nolan Ryan, whether it was Pete O'Brien, whether it was Palmeiro, whether it was Juan Gonzalez, Ivan Rodriguez, those names, Dean Palmer. My sons were huge fans of Dean Palmer. So remember Kevin Oster, the shortstop?
Yeah.
Esther, yeah.
Elster.
Yeah, they were huge fans of him too. And
Mike Kapler was one of ours.
That's right. Macklemore, the second baseman. Yeah. David Murphy was one of my favorites. Yep. So all these guys, I felt really happy for them.
Ken Hill.
That's right. I was so happy that David Murphy and Macklemore were doing the post-game show on the night they clinched the pennant. What a neat thing to do. What great timing that was. So it was a great time, a great ride. We'll not get enough of it, I suppose, but eventually spring training comes, as you know, in your job, and eventually we're going to get to spring training. Now, we did get some news today that the Rangers have re-signed Andrew Heaney and Jose Leclerc. So that's a good step, I think. And because there are always concerns about what they were going to do with those two. But so they're signed up.
They're signed.
So now we have. So let me put it this way. Give me what you think the 2024 team is going to look like. Any new faces that you see coming? I'm not talking about free agents because
no, but
the only
you're looking at you and I talked about this before, and guys like Nathaniel Lowe, who is going to need a little bit of a break from first base. You want to see maybe someone step in, give him some relief against other type of pitchers that he's not so good with. That will give Bochy kind of an option that, if you can get into that other team's bullpen, and then your matchup is a little different, then you bring him back in the late innings and be a pinch hitter. Then he can go defensively. You got that. You got Duran coming back. Look for him to maybe. I know he's got an invite back to spring training, so we'll see. If he can make the roster. Leody Taveras. Listen, you say what you want about that outfield. Everybody's saying the outfield wasn't that great. Evan Carter proved that he still doesn't know he's a rookie. He doesn't. I've never seen such a cool head in my life.
That is, to me, that may be the biggest story of all.
He comes in as a call-up in September.
I know.
From Frisco and walks away with a ring.
That is so, that can only happen. And somebody was saying the other day that Bruce Bochy would love to manage Evan Carter for a long time. I would too. Yeah. But a couple of guys that I was thinking, you're looking at the 24-24 team, and I'm just looking at the roster, and at the everyday players, not the pitchers. But for example, if you could give Nathaniel Lowe 20 to 25 games off, maybe not that many, 20 games off against tough left-handers. If you could have Marcus, instead of playing 162, play 150. Seager obviously is he's going to play a lot of games, but maybe he can play 150. Even the third baseman, Young, could use a little time off. The catcher situation, I guess he'll go with Heim. But
Jonah Heim is solidified himself behind the plate. But
yes,
one of the things is, and we talked about Sam Huff. Huff is a catcher. That's his natural position. So, but the one knock, if you want to call it that, on Sam, he'll tear up the minor leagues. He'll tear up minor league pitching all day long. He's got the numbers to prove it, and that's one of the reasons why the Rangers like him so much. He does well receiving every time he's behind the plate. When he gets to the show, not so much. We've seen it time and time again. I don't know if it's the pitching or if it's something else.
Well, it could also be he's not getting enough playing time. I mean,
that's true too. And he's not seeing
he
enough.
hasn't. I mean, you haven't really seen Sam Huff. I like to see Sam Huff be more of a first baseman, frankly. But if you could have Sam Huff in a DH first baseman and maybe catching situation, if ever, that could be helpful. But I would, if I was the Rangers, I'd take a chance on Sam Huff being able to hit a few home runs up here.
Yep.
I just think it's now he's also, by the way, if you're looking at maybe bolstering the bullpen, you've got Sam Huff, you got Duran. Those are extremely tradable pieces to another team. And then and you may know more about this, but they have a young infielder, Foscue, is it, down in AAA, who's getting a lot of publicity. Foscue, I think it is.
Boscue is he's getting some press. He's getting some MLB scouts have talked about him, though they talk about him more as, just you were mentioning, maybe trade bait.
Okay.
Maybe
even that is worth it.
And say what you want. Chris Young pulled off some great trades this year.
He did.
And you got Scherzer. Who would have thought that?
That's right.
But then again, Scherzer came from a team that was having a garage sale, more like a fire sale, because they got rid of Verlander and Scherzer.
Mm-hmm. Right. And they also got rid of the guy who ended up with Arizona, right?
Yeah.
Pham, isn't it?
Tommy Pham.
Right. Who's a pretty good player. I didn't realize how good he was.
He scared the daylights out of me every time he stepped to the plate.
Good player. I don't know if he's a free agent, but
Evan Longoria is still with Arizona. And, I remember his days down in Tampa.
That's right. And remember, something else, too, is that those Tampa Bay Rays and Rangers playoff series, they played each other quite a few years against each other. But when I look at 2024, I see a team that can repeat, certainly be in the postseason. I don't whether they can actually get into the World Series. There's always a lot of factors in that, but I think they will be a candidate to at least get into the postseason and maybe even play in the LCS again. I wouldn't be surprised. Getting it,
I wouldn't be either.
Get into the World Series, that's always more complicated,
It is, and there's too many variables to get to that point. One of the variables might be down I-45.
Right. Well, sure.
Because they're talking seriously. I'm going to throw a name at you. One of the guys that might be up for that job down in Houston is a guy named Ron Washington. Tell me how much that would be an interesting matchup.
That would be cool. And they're also talking about Cody Bellinger playing left field for them.
Yep.
I read that because when we were at the wedding, there were a couple of Astros fans, family sort of Astros fans, and Cody Bellinger is a possible. Ron Washington would be great. I mean, that would be fantastic.
But I think the matchup between Bochy and Washington again, we did it in 2010. Can we do it again?
Well, Washington would bring some of the same qualities that Bochy brought here.
Yep.
Veteran, steady kind of guy. So that would be cool. But I was also talking to some friends, these friends from Houston, and the Astros are not going to win 4 out of 6 pennants again. They're on the other side of that line. I think you'll see them decline a little bit, but they're still very competitive, at least for a year or two. I see Seattle also being very competitive for the next year. So the West is going to be tough for the Rangers. They may be able to win it again or should win it again, but they're going to be very competitive. I mean, we're going to have a competitive baseball team here for quite a few years, Dave. That's my feeling. It's going to be good baseball here for the next 3 to 5 years. Maybe
That I don't disagree with. 2 years ago, I would have questioned that. 2 years ago, I couldn't see where we are today. 2 years ago, this team was losing 100 plus games. Last year, they lost 94. And then all of a sudden, you win it all, even though only winning 90 games on the season. But I mean, look at the turnaround that was from losing 94 to winning 90 and making it to the postseason, making it be all the way to the World Series, taking the World Series. So to answer that part of the equation, I think with Chris Young and Bochy at the helm, you've got the right elements in the right place for the Rangers to make a very strong running again. With you were mentioning Seattle, California, or the LA Angels. Sorry, the Angels, they got a mess right now because there's still talk about Ohtani not coming back to the Angels, that he goes free agent. And he might test the waters and see who's got. And trust me, there are teams out there that got bucks. Texas is one of them. People might not believe that, but Texas got some bucks. They proved it. They went out and bought guys they needed, the Simeon and Seager and Scherzer and Montgomery and Garver. They went out and got these guys. It was a paycheck. But then you got guys like New York and the Yankees and teams like the Dodgers. So Ohtani is going to be going to the highest bidder. Here's another equation for the Angels to think about. What's going to happen to Trout?
Right, exactly. That's the one I was thinking about. That's the one I'd rather have, actually.
Exactly. I like to have his bat in his outfield, his glove. The other one, the other team that we're not going to worry about now is whatever they're going to call themselves, the Athletics. Are they going to be in Oakland? Are they going to be in Vegas? Or are they going to be in the toilet? Take your pick.
Yeah, they're not going to be a factor, but that's always a young team, and they're always interesting. Look what they did to Houston there in September.
Right.
But Trout is the kind of guy that, I mean, if you're the Angels, you're not going anywhere. You're not going to have Ohtani. Trout would be the kind of guy that you could trade to the Rangers, for example, and pick up some really good everyday players,
and not frontliners either. They could pick out of the farm,
right,
and get some youth.
That's right. Duran, you might even be able to trade Duran. I hate to see him go.
I don't know if Duran's enough for Trout, but I mean, Duran and a few others.
Include a package. I mean, that it would include Duran. Now, one last question I wanted to ask you. Jordan Montgomery, he's a free agent, I know. But I think he likes playing here, and I think he likes playing for Bochy. I think Bochy is going to be a real magnet for attracting people here. So I'm going to bet that Montgomery stays here.
That's a pretty good bet. I don't know if it's a safe bet, but it's a pretty good bet. I'd like to see him stay here. He seemed to, when he got here, of course, remember, he got here midseason, got here on the trade deadline. But he acclimated himself very quickly to the area, his family. Everybody, they all said the same thing. They all said the right words. Everything was great around them. And that's important. Remember, when we got Cliff Lee midseason back in 2010, he never settled, which is the reason why at the end of the season, and after the Rangers were eliminated from the World Series with the Giants, it was, I'm going back to Philadelphia. See ya. And that was the end of that.
Yeah, and I remember that because you and I were working together at the time, and I remember, saying to you, I think one morning, if Nolan Ryan cannot convince you to stay with the Texas. Because the money was going to be about the same. There's no big deal on the money. So he was going to make a lot of money no matter where he went. So if Nolan Ryan cannot convince you to stay here, he never wanted to be here.
Exactly.
And I think Montgomery is a different situation. But I tell you what, we're just about out of time. But I want to thank you again. And I think you and I share this great moment about the Rangers. And now we can look forward to the next big deal, and it is winning another one.
I look forward to it.
That would be.
I will be there opening day.
Yes,
and enjoying that again. And we'll see if the feel is the same as it was in April of 2023.
Well, I'll keep track of the Rangers. I love your Facebook notes about the Rangers. They can catch you up real fast on what's happening. So keep that up because I enjoy it. I enjoy it. You know, when you bring up the updates, I enjoy that. Sometimes if I'm late getting to the game for whatever reason, I check your notes and I get a quick update on what's happening with the Rangers. So I know I appreciate it. I'm sure other people do as well. Well, Dave,
I got a surprise note from a former
yeah.
English teacher. She said, "Why weren't you this good of a writer when you were in high school?"
Because you weren't writing about baseball. You
I
should tell her
wasn't.
that. That's right. You were writing about stuff you didn't care about, and now you're writing about stuff that you love. But I love what you do, and it's always a great honor. So happy Thanksgiving, Merry
Same to you, my
Christmas,
friend,
Happy
and
New
to your
Year.
family.
Yes, and we the next 45 days, we're loaded up with holidays. But after the first of the year, then we start thinking baseball again in spring. My goodness, what is it? 4 months? In 4 months or 5 months?
February.
February, yeah, in middle of
So 3
February,
months. We're three and a
we
half
will
months
be.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it won't be long. It won't be
No.
long. Everybody needs a rest. Well,
About
these guys need a
141
rest.
days, if I'm counting.
Yes, so it's going to come real fast. It's going to come
Yep.
real fast. And you're right about Chris Young. Chris Young is going to make some things happen.
We'll see.
And he's going to make some very interesting things happen. But number one on that list, if you ask my opinion, would be locking Montgomery. I think if he can get that done, I'm really pleased he did it with Haney and Leclerc. So I'm hoping that he can lock up Montgomery, and that's going to be a lot of fun next year. Dave, you have a wonderful day, and my best to you. Happy Thanksgiving, happy Christmas, everything else. Hopefully we can chat again after the holidays and talk a little baseball. Maybe I shouldn't say, we might talk if there are some interesting off-season trades. I may pick your brain again on that.
Anytime, my friend.
All right.
Anytime.
Well, you have a great day, and thank you so much for the time.
Thanks for having me, and Feliz Navidad.
Feliz Navidad. Okay, we'll talk to you later. Our good friend Dave Michaels talking a little baseball, Ranger baseball. It's so much fun. I can't get enough of it. I mean, that's just the bottom line. I cannot get enough of talking Ranger baseball at this time with the World Series and everything else. Thank you for listening. Again, bad news on the Cowboys. They lost a heartbreaker today, a real heartbreaker today. That's all I can tell you. And it means they're 5-3, and the Eagles are now 8-1. So that's it's going to be tough for the Cowboys to win the East. They can still get in, of course, as a wild card, but it's going to be pretty tough to win the East. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.